wrestling expert on the show.
He is the Dave Filoni of wrestling history. He's that good. He's the Dave Filoni of, and if you don't know who that is, go look him up.
It's a lot of pressure. It's a lot of pressure, Jimmy.
Yeah, way to lay it on thick.
Oh yeah,
right off the bat. It's okay though.
Like my cream cheese and my bagel sandwiches.
Thick. Anywho, we got this awesome documentary. I watched it last night. It's awesome. Basically recaps Stone Cold's career through wrestling, his rise to stardom, and the run that he went on that's basically been unmatched as far as the quick rise, ascent to the top, and just...
As Paul Heyman put it, he basically saved the WWE.
So, okay, well, since you bring it up, that's pretty much the clip that I had. So I'm just going to play the sound clip from the documentary to kind of start the conversation. And it's hearing a little bit of what we just heard, but it's just a really good clip. And you're hearing Triple H, Stone Cold, and then Paul Heyman in this clip.
It was the era of holy shit. Steve's Glass was the soundtrack to holy shit. No matter what was happening, holy shit, right? Like that was the moment. I'm getting goosebumps right now talking about it. Whether it's an arena of 2,000 or 20,000 or 100,000, they know when that glass breaks, there's a summons coming out there to deal out a can of World Pass. That was the walk of a guy who had been down the road, paid his dues, learned the business, got over despite what anybody else thought about him. This guy's not marketable. He's never going to draw no money. The company finally picked me, and that's the guy walking to the ring. The character of Stone Cold Steve Austin was a very reality-based persona, which is not what this industry was built on. So the whole Attitude Era that was ushered in as an extension of the personality that was brought out by Stone Cold Steve Austin. And that makes him, in many ways, the most pivotal human being and character in pro wrestling history.
I mean, obviously, massively high praise. But, Anthony, as the wrestling expert on the podcast, what were your thoughts overall, just on the documentary?
I thought it was outstanding.
Agreed.
Just like he said, goosebumps kind of throughout the entire thing. Like it took a couple days for the goosebumps to go down, and I actually just watched the first 45 minutes today just to kind of get a little refresher. And same thing, just hearing him talk and hearing basically what everyone had to say about Steve. It just goes to show you that, number one, I mean, the most important character, most important draw, the most important champion that ever was in the business. And that's beating out Hogan. That's beating out Rock, I feel like. And Jimmy knows The Rock's my guy. He's my number one personally, but as far as business goes, Austin kind of revolutionized what we watched growing up. And
I thought it was really interesting too that kind of growing up, and as you got older, you started to sort of learn more about wrestling and how it was not two guys just literally beating the shit out of each other, but it was more of a show and acting a little bit and things like that. But the character of Stone Cold Steve Austin really mimicked his Steve Austin's true personality, rather than when he was first coming up and he was
Stunning Steve Austin.
That was more of a grand showman character built persona, and then when he became famous is when he was really just kind of being himself. Yeah. And obviously things are exaggerated and things like that, but for the most part that was just Steve Austin out there.
Yeah, I mean, it was really cool to see what all the trials and tribulations that he went through. The fact that he was clearly just built for this. He was just physically a fit guy and big.
He's still
and strong.
In great shape. That's one of the observations I had.
He was still just
shape.
Huge. But then when he got to the ring, just talked about how it just felt natural but then just never really getting the good character. And even when he pitches this idea for Stone Cold Steve Austin, the creative comes back to him with all these shitty nicknames, like Fang McFrost and Mr. Freeze and
Chili McFreeze is now every
McFreeze.
username I'm ever going to use. For the rest of my life.
Jimmy, I was just about to say that I'm claiming that right now for my fantasy football team this year.
Those are all good.
Luckily, we're not in the same. We're not in the same any of the same leagues, but yeah, that's definitely Chili McFreeze.
Chili McFreeze.
It just kind of goes
greatest worst wrestling name ever.
Well, and it just kind of goes to show too how the creative kind of works against you almost with the idea. Even like the Ringmaster, when he got that moniker when he first came to the WWF, he talked about how it was just boring, and he eventually just changed the color of his trunks because no one was paying attention anymore. Correct. And he was just
my favorite line that he ever. I got two things. My favorite line that he ever says, because I listen to his podcast all the time. He doesn't do it anymore, but I listen to like the old episodes, and his idea of the Ringmaster was that it was the drizzling shits. Like that's literally what he says. If something is so bad, it's the drizzling shits. And you could totally hear him.
That's a fantastic term.
You could totally hear him saying it. I wish I could do an actual Stone Cold impression, but the drizzling shits is basically what the Ringmaster was. And then my second point, Andy brought up how it used to be like so character driven, and like it was the dumpster man and like, Freeze man and this guy and the clown and the, whatever.
Right.
His thing that he always says, and a lot of people say it, Triple H will say it, Mick Foley will say it, is basically the best gimmicks of that time were just your personality turned to 11.
Yeah.
So like that's always what Stone Cold said. He was like, that was me, just turned to 11. When it was time to go out there and take care of business, turn up the volume to 11 and just start raising hell. So
I feel like that kind of paved the way too for the modern era of wrestling. There are far less, like kind of ridiculous characters that are out there, and more just a
names.
Guy like Roman Reigns, where like,
Kevin Owens, like Seth Rollins,
exactly.
are just like regular dudes now.
Mm-hmm. All their first and last name.
Yeah,
and
right. Exactly.
For the most part, they all use. I mean, for the most part they use just their first and last name, or they'll have their first name and then like a little gimmick name. But yeah, for the most part, it's all just like you said. They're just regular. One
of the things I found super interesting was, and I can't remember his name, one of the creative writers said they would basically be in the room and say, what could we have Steve do now? Because, I mean, when he came out with the Zamboni, when he came out with the beer truck, it was basically like, how much more ridiculous could we get this? And we bought it. We loved it.
Yeah,
we couldn't wait
Bruce
to see.
Pritchard.
Yes.
Bruce Pritchard was the guy
awesome.
who, if you want to talk about wrestling, I'll just go ahead and throw that. He was Brother Love.
Never knew that.
Yeah, the Undertaker's red-faced, creepy.
I did not know that.
Yeah,
he's the Dave Filoni of WWF. That's what I'm talking.
I have to throw that one in there because I knew that for sure, and that's my one that I had to.
So one of the other observations I noticed, and I don't think I could put how I felt about this until I heard an actual wrestler say it, and then it kind of made sense to me, was Kevin Owens said, like, we're good, but we'll never be Stone Cold. And lately, when I've watched wrestling, I feel like I haven't enjoyed it as much because I'm always thinking, well, they're not The Rock. They're not Stone Cold. They're not Mankind. So I need to kind of back off of that and reset my expectations, because you're never going to have that again. I mean, first of all, the whole era of wrestling is different. They can never get away with the Attitude Era now, like they did 20, 30 years ago. So, but even the WWE stars are cognizant and know that we're never going to be him. We're just trying to be as good as we can be. And I thought that was a very interesting point and kind of helped me reset my expectations of wrestling.
My favorite part was seeing, and I mentioned this to Andy before we started recording, when we watched this stuff, we were kids. So we were experiencing it through that lens of like innocence. And now watching back and seeing how some of this stuff came together, like for the example, the fact that he won King of the Ring came because Triple H and HBK and Razor Ramon and Kevin Nash, they all came together and kind of did a curtain call after one of the matches and broke that curtain, and Vince McMahon got pissed. So they put him in that position. So even when he did create this awesome character, the company still wasn't ready to put him at the top, and he still kind of just had to earn his way, even if it was kind of by default. And then to see the promo that he cuts just off of a whim, how he talks about it, just pretty much came off the dome like that. That just proves that he was going to be a superstar regardless of when his opportunity came, because that's got to be one of the best promos that's ever been cut in wrestling. And then to see that next night on Raw when they showed the crowd with all the Austin 316, that was, I got the chills talking about it now. It was, and I remember experiencing that, Jimmy, when they showed Vince McMahon, "You're fired." I was like, I was there. I yelled that out loud. I didn't kind of yell. Melissa was sleeping. So I was like, I was there. But it was just, it was so awesome seeing this, what I experienced as a kid, and then seeing it and understanding it as an adult now, and also seeing like everything that he sacrificed as a human in order to really get to this point. He put everything out there and put everything on the line until he couldn't anymore. And it's just, I have like way more respect for him now, just seeing like how at peace he is with everything too, but just like sacrifice his relationship with his daughters and his family, and he knows and admits that, like, he was a crappy dad, but he's trying to make amends. And
right.
It was interesting to see like that side of it. You don't realize these guys are just on the road driving and like, doing all this in between being out there performing every night, right? 3
I
nights
also,
a week.
and I've always had an appreciation, but now I appreciate Vince McMahon even more, who just went out there and said, "Beat the hell out of me, do whatever you want to me. Let's make this employee versus boss thing as realistic to people as we can." And it worked. We bought into it. We loved it. You hated Vince McMahon, but just how much of an integral part he was to making Stone Cold who he is today. And it's cool to know that through their trials and tribulations, they still have a really good relationship that seemed to be broken for a while and now has been repaired.
Yeah, seeing him kind of admit towards the end there that like he's basically one of a kind. Like there's no one else like Steve Austin. I feel like that was like a big moment because like you said, they kind of have had a rocky relationship towards the end of his career, and then since he retired. And Vince McMahon looks like a balloon. Like it's like what only, and it's worse because they're showing clips of him when he looks young and like fit and normal, and then they go back to him and it's like straight up blow up doll.
Yeah,
it's rough.
He's a weird.
Also, to go out there every night and know you're gonna get kicked in the stones because he can't lift his leg that high because of how tight his jean shorts are, and to do it anyways, that's dedication.
That was a great little. Yeah, that was a great little tidbit.
Yeah, in there. It was. All around the documentary was really well done. I took a couple of notes that we've talked about so far, but the Rich Kuklinski thing about how he was watching a serial killer document, he was worked for the mob, right? So he was a hitman,
yeah. And
just to that's what that character is based off of.
That second picture they showed of him where he's like staring down at the camera, that was like that's what he based the whole character off of. You could tell, and that was my favorite part, is just like seeing all the different clips that they had of him just walking down the aisle in character, seeing him go backstage, like kind of get into that character mode. Like he's walking by all these people and it's just like you just see him kind of peek over their shoulder, like that's Stone Cold. All the production people.
It was a ruthless, just him walking down, like he had that ice in his veins. Like when that glass broke, like he literally he became that. Right, that person, like
that head bob of him was so intimidating. Just
Shane McMahon mentioned like he's always talking to himself when he's whatever he's saying to himself, like he just like is getting into that character. Yeah,
it's the absolute best, and I feel like those are the things that take a character to like the next level, like being able to do those little intricate things and like the way you walk and the way you stomp and the way that you talk shit in the ring and like. Agreed. All of those little things, like that's you personally as a character. But think about like how intricate and like how much everyone around him that played a vital role in his character development, how important they were. like going all the way back from, like you said, Triple H and the curtain call and all that stuff. And then the whole Jake the Snake Roberts doing the religious promo, and then Mark Marrow busting his lip and sending him to the hospital, to where Michael P.S. Hayes is telling him, like, hey, he just did a religious promo. So Austin's like, all right, cool, I'm going to roll with it. This is what I'm going to do. And then Austin 316 comes. And then Bret Hart. And then, you know, even like the Mike Tyson stuff and Vince McMahon, all the way up to The Rock. When we don't have anyone for Austin to fight, what are we going to do? All right, well, we'll take the second biggest guy in the company, put them together, and they make the, you know, one of the best rivalries in wrestling history. It's just every little thing had to happen perfectly in order for you know, his career to take off the way that it did. And like we said in the beginning, like, he was the hottest commodity ever. Like,
also,
Uwe Hogan.
One thing that
Agreed.
As a kid, you see all these adults kind of messing around, and they're just adults at that point. Like, you have no reference of how old they are or anything like that. They're just older than you. But because he had his come up as Stunning Steve Austin and things like that, like the Stone Cold Steve Austin character, he was relatively old when that whole era kind of started, and gives you even more appreciation for all the shit that he did with laying his body out on the line and things like that, probably going up against guys almost half his age. Like, just crazy.
Yeah, and
watching that pile driver from Owen Hart, and then like really breaking down when you see him crawling and he can't use his hands.
I'm just gonna say, when he's crawling on his forearms and you can see his hands like clenched, kind of like this, like he can't even move them. And then he talks about, like, you know, the worst. What do they call it? The roll up, and like, you know, but it's
in the history of wrestling.
I mean, it was you saw it when he started to go down, how the way that his head was peeking underneath. It was like a turtle head poking out of your ass, and you had to take a dump. But you knew that was gonna be bad, and the fact that he had like a hesitancy when they were talking about it pre-match is just kind of like eerie too. Like, it's almost like he sensed that okay, he's like, all right, that doesn't really feel right, but he had just kind of, you know, gotten this come up and was rolling with it and didn't want to ruin it. You know, he was winning the Intercontinental title. He's not gonna try and, like, you know.
Yeah, that was a huge. So my neighbor, we recently, well, not recently, like, we, you know, became good friends, and he kind of got me back onto this whole, like, wrestling thing. And, like, with all these biographies coming out and, like, Dark Side of the Ring and, you know, all this stuff happening, like, I've gotten, like, back to, you know, I'll watch it every now and then. Like, I watch WrestleMania, we watch the Royal Rumble and this and that. And we were just talking the other day about the idea of that exact thing, like that horrible roll up, that horrible situation. But it, like, just goes to show you how consummate of a professional Owen Hart is to, like, be able to kind of distract from what was going on and, like, kind of push the referee to the side and, like, tell him, like, you know, what are you doing? This and that, blah, blah, blah. I just wish that they would not have done that roll up the way that they did. Like, if you know that something's wrong, you know that he has a broken neck, or you know that he's really hurt, figure out something else. Because chances are, if he's hurt, he's going to be on the shelf for a couple weeks. So why give him the title? And then, so that was, like, the one thing I was talking about to him the other day. I'm like, God, I just wish they didn't do that shitty roll up, because they could have made something. It was literally like he was just, like, standing there, and, like, and Owen was, like, flopping. Like, it was stupid.
That's basically just breaking the curtain as well, too. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, for them to just go through with it like that, that might as well just be curtain calling at the end of a match with your opponent.
Yeah, especially when there's things in place, like, shit, if this guy gets hurt, like, he gave him the pile driver. Hey, Owen, I can't move. I can't feel anything. Pin me. Take it home. Let's go. Pin me, and we'll figure it out afterwards. Like, you know, but yeah, it's there's a lot of, like, little videos like that of things like that happening in the ring, and, like, you know, what professionals will do when that stuff happens, and it's pretty cool to watch.
That's another interesting aspect that I don't think a lot of people think about with wrestling, when they showed his last match against The Rock, and how it had to be The Rock, basically, because of all the history that they had. And then at the end of that match, just The Rock basically wanting to just express as much emotion as possible towards him, but not being able to, and just really just kind of, like, staying on a knee so he could tell him exactly what he was feeling and how much he appreciated everything that he did for him without really just being able to hug him and be like, but, to hear them both say, and the way that Stone Cold described it, two big, strong-ass dudes laying in the ring telling each other that they love one another. Like,
right.
It's just because, you don't realize all this effort and energy that they put forth together, and they're the only ones who understand what each other is going through. So
right. And I tried looking this up and couldn't find it, and it just kind of popped in my head. So I could be way off, but was that the only time The Rock's ever beaten him one-on-one? Because I couldn't remember another time where, every highlight you see of the two of them, it's always The Rock getting his ass kicked.
Maybe so I clean. It might be the only time he's ever beaten him clean.
Right, like where it wasn't a DQ or I honestly I couldn't find it and I couldn't remember, so I want to do some research on that and follow up. But every highlight just him getting stunned.
And as many matches as they had, like one-on-one against each other, there were so many matches that the two of them were involved in that weren't even scheduled matches that, like, quote unquote, Steve Austin versus The Rock.
Right.
Where they just inserted themselves into other storylines.
Whatever they want.
Yeah, it was awesome.
Because they had that power.
And I can't remember specifically, but anytime one of them saved the other, it was just like your week was made.
The best.
Like you're just sitting there waiting and you're hoping and you hear that music and you see The Rock coming out, John, or Stone Cold running out, John, and they clear 18 guys out of the ring and they glare at each other and then walk away. It was just like, oh man. That was I remember Pat and I being out, like with our friends. You'd be like, oh, we got to go home. Raw's coming on, and you'd leave what you were doing, and we would go home. We'd sit and watch wrestling. It was like it was prime time TV. You had to be there.
Yep. Glorious.
It was the best.
Appointment television. That's the words I'm looking for.
My favorite clip they showed was when Vince McMahon's in the hospital and he's dressed up like the doctor. It's just like.
Don't worry, nurse.
Yeah.
I'll take it from here. And Vince just
smashes him with the pan. It's just so good.
There was nothing fake about that bedpan.
Oh, no.
Nothing fake about that. I'm gonna
Stainless steel bedpan. And also, I completely forgot about him pretending to give him an enema or whatever it was. When you just see him going, he's like,
Perfect.
That's what I love about it, too, because you wonder how much they know of that stuff going in. Because I feel like Austin just seems like a guy who really kind of kept to himself, and his best moments, things just kind of came to him in the moment. Like, he has so many good...
They said they talked about hitting him with the bedpan. Like, Vince brought it up,
right.
And Stone Cold was like...
But the enema thing...
Are you sure?
You know what I mean? Like, like something like that thrown. He's like, well, who's going to pitch that? What if I shove a tube up your ass? That'd be funny.
Could you imagine that thing on TV now in today's day and age? That would be red flagged all over the place.
So much stuff.
I love when they just showed that chick with the huge tits flash the camera just dead on. They're like, the Attitude Era pushed the boundaries. It was...
And Big Cat coming on to say probably the most expulsions, detentions, and suspensions ever, which is the kids going suck it all the time to each other.
Oh, without question.
So good.
I'm curious as to
why.
why,
I mean, it's so true.
Why was he like? It's just funny that he was one of the random.
Yeah.
You know what? I think I could be wrong, but I think A&E airs the show Bar Rescue, and he's been on a couple episodes of that. He's friends with John Taffer, so.
Yeah, I was going to say that was for sure him just calling in some favors saying.
I mean, he is a pretty prominent media figure now, but I just they've interviewed him too, so maybe that's.
I was just going to say that Barstool's had a couple interviews with Stone Cold, and I don't know who was like producing the documentary. Maybe Stone Cold had a hand in producing all these that are coming out and kind of called in a favor for an interview.
He missed a big opportunity, though, because I know for a fact he has a Stone Cold Steve Austin tracksuit that he's worn for Jumpsuit
I know
January.
That they're all like
Should've
really
worn
big.
that.
He's a huge, because I know that he had like a wrestling. I want to say that he had like a wrestling podcast, or he did something on one of the podcasts where he talked.
I know they have a video where him and Dave dressed like Bret Hart
at
WrestleMania and like walked around and interviewed people. It was pretty funny. Back when Dan was like like pretty fit.
Yeah,
he actually didn't look. He looked decent in the leotard. So, quick question for you, since you're like the resident wrestling expert. Alyssa watched like 15 minutes of it with me, and the only question that she had was, why do they wear Speedos? That was literally the only question she had about anything that she consumed. And I was like, all right, you can go to bed.
I think that's just like the glamour aspect of it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like being able to see like bodybuilders.
That's what I said. Because they're physiques. And she's like, well, they don't all look like that. And I was like, well, I don't know what you want me to tell you. That's just.
The ones that don't look like that don't wear the Speedos.
Yeah.
Yeah. No.
Right? Why do you think Mankind has like leotard pants on and a dress shirt?
Right.
Yeah, that's a whole other thing too. There's that other show that
I was just going to say
is awesome.
The one that follows it, it's like apparently so there's cool. All this gear from the WWF's past that's like missing. Like 80% of like memorabilia is missing.
So that's a really interesting, cool show. It's like the greatest treasures or whatever.
Yeah, WWE's greatest treasures. It comes on right after the documentary series every week.
Yeah.
So and we're gonna have Anthony on for the next couple weeks because it's 5, 6.
No, I want to say 8.
Do we
8, really?
Do we know like the whole lineup? Is it out anywhere? Like where you can see? Because I know it's Roddy Piper, and then Macho Man. Are they doing one on The Rock?
I think.
No, it's Booker T's on there. Shawn Michaels, Bret Hart.
Okay.
And I think that's it. I think it's Austin, Roddy, Macho Man, Ultimate Warrior, HBK, Booker T, Bret Hart, and I'm missing one.
Trying to pull it up really quick.
Yeah, I'm missing one.
So we got a nice little series.
It might be Taker, but I don't think so.
Oh, I hope it is. That would be
cool because they interviewed him a bunch in Austin.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Tone, appreciate you joining us to give us your expertise. Looking forward to having you on
I'm pumped.
Steve Austin, Randy Savage, Roddy Piper, Booker T, Shawn Michaels, Bret Hart, Mick Foley, and Ultimate Warrior.
Hell yeah. Okay. All right. Perfect.
Cool. Well, can't have Undertaker. I'm happy with.
All right. Well, looking forward to having you on for the rest. Enjoy your partay.
Hell yeah, guys. We appreciate it. And we'll see you next week.
All right. Later.
See you guys. Take it easy.
That was fun.
That was fun. It's so fun to relive all this stuff. Like there's so much about that. Like just the beginning is him he was jacked in middle school. Dude had enormous hands in middle school. The fact that he's a straight A student in high school and then drops out of college and know he wants to become a wrestler and was ecstatic when he got $75K a year to wrestle in WCW and then you see the flip side of that about how he was so consumed with wrestling, he basically ignored his wife, he ignored his kids. He was on top by himself. They said he embodied that "don't trust anybody" moniker that he talked about. So it's not all glamour. I mean, yes, he's famous. Yes, he has a ton of money, but we saw the injury. You see the loneliness. I think I told you guys to completely pivot and go off, Mark, that I saw him walking through the Las Vegas airport the first time I was there.
That.
And I didn't think it was him because he had a Stone Cold shirt on, the fanny pack, the jorts, the boots. But it was him. Like I did like 2 or 3 takes and holy shit, that's actually Stone Cold Steve Austin.
You didn't
walking
say anything
through Vegas airport. No, I was so like
starstruck.
You just couldn't. I couldn't even speak. Now I
Seems
probably
like a missed opportunity. When I saw Jerry Lawler, I was just like, I gotta say something.
Next week, ask Anthony about he's had
I've heard
encounters in Vegas with WWE personalities. So we'll bring that up next week.
I've heard. All right, we've got a movie review coming your way. The new Mortal Kombat came out on HBO Max April 23rd. We've all seen it finally.
Watched it last night.
Gonna bring you guys a review, official review. All right, who wants to go first, or what do we think?
I think I have differing opinions, so I'm gonna let you go.
I think
first.
so. I did not like it. I mainly because I thought the acting was terrible.
Awful.
Terrible.
Distractingly
bad. And
acting and writing was awful.
And the made up lead character was the worst actor of the bunch.
Agreed.
And for his power to be an armor suit because he gets his ass kicked all the time, just add Johnny Cage to the movie. Don't even have this guy. Don't need an original character. And and there was no
very odd move.
There was no tournament, like official tournament. So that was like they were getting to it. I get it, but I don't know. There were fatalities were cool, but I couldn't. I was distracted by the acting. I couldn't appreciate it. But I did appreciate. Go ahead. Sorry.
And Sonya Blade were the most. So my reaction at the end was wah, wah. I was so excited for it. Now I will say, I think his name is Joe Taslim, the guy that played Sub-Zero and actually did the choreography as Sub-Zero and as Scorpion, was phenomenal. Yeah. He has a show on HBO called Warrior, and it was introduced. It was pitched like 50 years ago by Bruce Lee, and Hollywood said, no way Americans will follow a Chinese star. And this show I have not watched yet is now produced by his daughter or his niece or granddaughter or something. And it's supposed to be phenomenal. And he's on that show. And he is the reason I didn't give this movie a worse rating, because he was absolutely incredible. And so was, what's his name?
Kano?
Kano was fucking hilarious. Like, he was hysterical. He saved that movie also, but it just was. So I gave it an official 7.000, which falls in the not good category.
Score.
And yeah, it doesn't happen often. So to put that in perspective,
do you really have to add the 30 decimals to the back of it?
Have to. It got the exact same score for me as the original Justice League. But it was better than both Baywatch and Power Rangers. So that's where it falls on the official scale. One
more thing before you jump in, Andy. Another gripe I forgot to mention was I feel like the marketing and the trailer was heavily reliant on the Sub-Zero versus Scorpion aspect of it, and there was very little of it. And then when you did get it, you had the main character mixed up in the middle of it. And
agreed.
I was disappointed. But to your point, Jim, those characters were good too. The acting was mainly by like Sonya and Jax and like all the but those guys were great. But Andy, I think you have a different spin on it, so willing to hear it out.
So I am very much on your guys' side that the acting and the writing was awful. It was distracting. It was laughable at times. Like I was sitting next to Lena and literally let out chuckles when there were just shitty one-liners or just poorly delivered lines. Very like really, really bad. But much like Kong vs. Godzilla, I thought the fights really kind of offset that well.
Fights were very good.
And I thought the CGI could have been better. I don't know what kind of budget they were working with, but there were times when the CGI looked pretty poor. Mm-hmm. But I thought the fights really did the video games justice.
Agreed.
There were a lot of regular like fighting moves that came directly from the video game, and then a lot of like callbacks to fatalities, brutalities, and things like that. Like the Scorpion breathing the fire, like that's a Mortal Kombat 1 fatality from that, and they've repeated it through every single game since then. And so I said that I was like, oh wow, that's really cool that they like kind of paid that homage, because Scorpion is well known for his chain ripping out of his arm and the get over here. But I thought that everything that they kind of did as it related to the video game, and even the dialogue during the fights, felt very video game-esque. where they kind of are shitty one-liners. And I don't know if that was on purpose or it was just continued shitty writing, but it felt on par with what the video game delivered back in the early 90s or whatever. So that part I appreciated, all the callbacks to the video games and the fights feeling very video game-esque. That's why I did kind of like, there were moments of dialogue that I let out laughter because it was so bad, but there were also moments in the fights where I was like, damn, that was a really cool moment. So overall, the movie was bad, but I appreciated pieces of it, and I appreciated the callback to the video game. It's a video game movie.
I agree with you, and I will be excited when they come out with the second and third. Probably just to be disappointed again. I am a Bears fan, so I'm used to that. So, that's just kind of how I feel about it.
I hope they continue it and hopefully kind of take some critique from what the first one was. I hope they don't just end it because it was bad, but I think a lot of people watched it on HBO. So I think their numbers are getting good. So for them to continue, they definitely tease it at the end. Spoiler alert. They teased Johnny Cage, that next character. So I agree with you guys that the new character felt very weird. I felt like you could have inserted any one of the main characters from the video game and had kind of that come up story.
Yes.
But to insert somebody completely new and try to work off that seemed odd to me. And I had no idea about that going into it. I was like, from the get-go, I was like, all right, who's this guy going to kind of morph into and become? And then they literally knocked off every single one of them. And then it just found out that it was some random dude that also has powers. So
I just hope that they go out and they find an actual actor to play Johnny Cage, because I have no hope that the writing will be better, but if you get a better actor, that's just less to. So go out. It doesn't have to be this amazing, well-known actor. Get somebody who can act, because
the guy that I thought the best acted character was the guy who played Scorpion.
Yes.
And he's like a noticeable actor. He's been in a lot of, Japanese era films. So he's recognizable, and I thought it showed that he was kind of above the rest of them.
Agreed.
Jim, I agree with you that I thought the best parts of the movie were the ones between Scorpion and Sub-Zero.
Yes.
They just the fighting felt more natural, and I don't know if that was because they probably used less CGI than the other fights, but I just thought they were more well choreographed. Just overall, I thought those pieces of the movie were way better. And Pat, I agree with you that it seemed like that it was marketed as a Sub-Zero and Scorpion movie, and we just didn't get that at all.
Right.
I think they just tried to get too cute. They should have just leaned into more of those video game references and just kind of made it for what it is and what for Mortal Kombat is supposed to be. They should have just had the actual Mortal Kombat competition and not tried to make this like original backstory, which I get. It's like you get your hands on this property and you're trying to make an original story.
Right.
But it just, you didn't have the acting chops to pull that off with anyone that you casted. And I agree that the fighting was good, and they did have some good callbacks to the game when they're doing the training, and Liu Kang does like 3 leg sweeps to Kano. Like stuff like that is just a callback to the players who played the first couple games on Super Nintendo or Sega, whatever you played it on. And Nick McDonald brought up a decent point to me that there's rumors, because again, spoilers, Sub-Zero dies at the end, but kind of gets like taken back into Sung Shi's smoke or whatever that stuff is. And the rumor is that he's going to come back as Noob Saibot. Do you guys know how that character got its name?
No.
The creators of Mortal Kombat's last names are Boone and whatever Saibot is backwards.
Okay.
Tape.
Yeah,
Tobis.
Tobis. Yeah.
That's
So
ridiculous.
Nick brought that up and is like the game in itself is built like on like ridiculous premises. So like you can't expect too much out of a movie, which I understand. But I don't know. I wasn't as entertained as I was hoping to be. So I gave it a 6.2.
So and going back to casting a better actor for Johnny Cage. When Kano delivered his lines, I was laughing not at how bad they were, but how good they were, how funny they were. They seemed so natural. So was everything written the same, and he was just that much of a better actor that his delivery, his timing, his inflection was better? Or did they just somehow were great at writing jokes and couldn't write another story? So that's why I'm hoping they get a better actor for Johnny Cage, because in my opinion, it was that the guy who played Kano was a better actor and had better delivery. And if you get a professional like that, I think that can take the movie not to the next level, but improve upon it enough to where it's not as laughable.
Which is also such a shame because, spoiler, the best character from that movie is now
not coming back,
gone, unless
or
they
is
right.
Well,
unless they revitalize.
Honestly,
it
the villains were much better actors than the heroes.
Also,
Cabal was
Sonya
good too.
Blade living in Gary, Indiana. The hell was that
a little
about?
weird. Yeah,
that was strange. But
I mean, go to Gary, Indiana. I was like,
right. Okay.
I guess it's one of those things where maybe I had my expectations up too high because of one, the trailer was really good, and two, I watched the first 7 minutes. And it got me excited thinking, it was going to be a Sub-Zero versus Scorpion rivalry movie, and it was not that.
See, I didn't see much. I didn't spoil anything, but I did hear the rumblings that it was not great, and so I think that probably tempered my expectations a little bit.
Okay.
But I still didn't think it was great. I'd probably.
Definitely watch it with a drink. It helps.
Yeah, 100%. I'd give it like a 6.1.
Okay.
So we're all...
See, it's funny because I
page.
talked it down so much more, but then I rated it higher than you did.
Yeah.
So, okay. I guess, dude, no, we're on this. We appreciate it for what it is, but it's not a great movie.
And we all know that I do my ratings on a scale, so mine will naturally be higher, but they're actually the same rating as you are giving.
Even if you add 3 decimals when they're all zeros, it's fine. All right, let's move on.
Boy, how exciting is this? With the 11th pick in the 2021 NFL Draft, my Chicago Bears select Justin Fields, quarterback, Ohio State.
It's the accuracy, it's the athleticism. When you see a guy with that kind of arm talent,
he's talking about Andy Dalton
with that kind of quarterback makeup that he has, with that kind of work ethic that's played in really big games and really big moments and performed in big moments, that's extremely tough. I was at the Michigan game a couple years ago when he came back in from a knee, and we know about the ribs and the hip, and I mean, this guy's toughness on a scale of 1 to 10 is an 11, and you just love that about him. Oh, and then by the way, he runs a 4.44, so you throw that all in together, and it just feels good. Feels good.
I knew that I wouldn't.
Feels good.
I knew that I wouldn't. So
Good.
So
Good.
I got you.
Cautious optimism
yes.
from Bears
Love that
fans.
term.
The Bears traded up in the draft to number 11. They drafted quarterback Justin Fields out of Ohio State. After he falls, he is the 4th quarterback drafted in the draft. And I think he's the most talented quarterback the Bears have ever had without even playing a snap. Just from
Okay.
a talented. I didn't say like best quarterback. From a talent standpoint. You heard what he just said. He runs a 4.44. He's got good arm
I'd say
strength.
he's the most athletic quarterback to ever play for the Bears.
I don't know. I'm saying the total package I mean, the Bears have a terrible history with quarterbacks, so I'm not going out on a limb. Like, Jay Cutler is the only other person you could really come out and say an argument
That's who
with.
was in mind for me.
Jay Cutler's the best quarterback the Bears have ever had.
So, okay, maybe I'll say he's up there. Like, Jay was no slouch either. He had a lot of talent, good athlete, but a lot of optimism. Andy Dalton's still the starter.
I think that's your best case scenario.
I think so too, actually. Give him an opportunity to learn, but I don't think this is going to be Mitch 2.0. I think Justin Fields established himself a worthy quarterback and a smart quarterback. Not to say that, well, maybe to say that Mitch was a dumb quarterback, but just he never figured it out here. And Justin Fields, all the advanced numbers, Pro Football Focus has a bunch, just like throws downfield over 30 yards, touchdowns over 20 yards, completions on his second read. He's like first or second in all of these statistics. And I do worry a little bit about the Ohio State quarterback curse that seems to exist, but something about this feels good, like the song indicated. I don't, and this is coming from someone who is supposed to be boycotting the Bears, so I still haven't worn any gear or anything. Okay, I'm still down on pace, but now,
and you know what? Rightfully so, as you should be.
This doesn't. I mean, they did pick a tackle too, but it's still.
Their tackle they drafted, I am all in on.
Real quick though,
all in on.
I'm okay with this because now, at least with Nagy, there's no excuses. This is clearly his guy, and if his offense can't succeed with his guy, then his offense can't succeed.
Yes.
Right, but how long of a leash do you give him?
Well, that's the other thing I don't think people are realizing is in their euphoria, we're now with Pace and Nagy for at least another 3 years. At least. Because you're going to give him his opportunity to develop his guy. And to Nagy's credit,
I think it's two, but
I think so too. I think one development year and 1 year with Fields on the field.
I think the two of them probably are dismissed at the same time if at the end of year 2 Fields is in there and not doing what is expected of him.
Okay,
which I don't think that's the leash on Fields. I think he probably has longer than that.
Oh,
but
for sure. I hope so.
If he makes it into the starting lineup, say 8 games in, and then sucks 8 games at the tail end, and then isn't good in year 2 with a full offseason and things like that, running with number ones, I think Nagy and Pace are both gone, because then that is not saying that Fields is a miss at that point, but signs would point to, okay, you just did it again. You traded up, got your guy, and he's not the next coming. Right. So I am, from an outsider's perspective, I think I voiced it. I am not an Ohio State quarterback fan.
Correct.
They have had their sample size. And that's not to say that the next, you shouldn't draft a quarterback because of where he went to school or anything like that. All signs point to him being a very good quarterback, but he was also the 4th quarterback taken for a reason.
Right.
He wasn't one of the top 3. People said he could have been the 3rd, but he wasn't. So,
which again is a crapshoot because
because there are some viable
how that's going to work. And to Matt Nagy's credit, his rankings of the quarterbacks came out from 2017. He had Trubisky 3, Watson 2, Mahomes 1. So he was part of getting Mahomes to Kansas City and part of developing him in that first year. Yep. So there's a lot to unpack here from my perspective. First of all, you didn't watch the Bears last year and were inspired. However, Andy Dalton is a better quarterback than Mitch Trubisky and a better quarterback than Nick Foles. Do I think he's going to get us to the promised land? Absolutely not. I have zero confidence in him. I'm just saying from that standpoint alone, Justin Fields should, and kind of like you said, maybe like halfway through, should start to get playing time. Game 8, Game 9, Game 10, whatever. And then after a full year of learning, getting some playing time, coming in the year after, he better be, okay, I'm not saying Mahomes or Watson-esque. I'm saying franchise quarterback-esque. starter here for the next 10 years esque. I don't want to put those expectations on him, but you don't pick a guy that early when your job is on the line to not come out and say, okay,
Well,
this dude is
I think
special.
I think really PFT commenter on Part of My Take said it best. They drafted a contract extension for the both of them. And
100% agree.
And while I don't think that's a negative on Fields or anything like that, they could have traded up and taken Mac Jones, and probably it's the same exact thing. You're basically just extending because now it's a wait and see game of what you did to do that. So I'm cautious as a football fan to be like, okay, the fourth quarterback in the draft taken is now like X amount of excitement. And I get it that you guys have not had a quarterback. The bar is very low for your quarterback position.
Can't even see it.
From an outsider's perspective, I think it needs to be tempered a little bit.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of overrated though, because a lot of reputable people out there still consider Fields the second best quarterback in the class. And as we've seen with 2017, where they're drafted doesn't always matter as far as like the quarterbacks where they're picked. But I just think when I look at the way that it's unfolded, I mean, just seeing the way that 2017 laid out, and they don't always work out like this. We've seen quarterbacks are probably the most unpredictable position to draft in sports, but the way that the quarterback class from 2017 worked out is, you thought that Watson was going to be basically like a Pro Bowl caliber player every year. He's turned into that. Mahomes had high upside. I don't think anyone thought he was going to be this good, but those guys both had good college careers, and then it proved to pay off big time in the pros. Whereas Mitch was the guy who was a question mark, and it only started one season. In this draft,
getting beat out by a Canadian football.
Right, exactly. So in this draft, you had, Trevor Lawrence is proven. I don't think everyone thinks he's going to be the next big thing. We'll see what happens there. But Zach Wilson and Trey Lance were kind of the two that came out of nowhere and feel more like the Trubisky picks, whereas Fields would be more like the Watson pick or Mahomes pick. So to me, and I hate to have to relate everything to that, but that's just the world that we live in as a Bears fan.
Absolutely.
But it just feels like, especially Trey Lance. Trey Lance took 150 less college snaps than Mitch did at the Division II level. So,
I think that's more about the potential upside.
Right. So
a bottomless floor, really.
So I feel more confident in the fact that, okay, the Bears went out and picked a guy who had proven himself a good quarterback in college. If he comes into the NFL and fails, it's on him. But I feel like the Bears
he went and balled out against one of the best defenses in the league in the playoffs.
The Bears made the right pick for the quarterback. Now, if he comes in and doesn't succeed, then that just sucks. We're just cursed. I don't know what it is then, but it's not like you look at this and be like, wow, that's a head scratcher. You can understand them trading up to take him. He could be the next big thing.
And all things considered, didn't give up a ton. I mean, you gave up a first rounder, which you guys are already thin on draft picks. But if a first rounder costs you a starter for the next 6 years, I mean,
the exchange is if you get your guy, then what you gave up doesn't matter in the long run because you've got your guy.
Yep.
All right, real quick, want to close the episode with this question that we pondered throughout this week. I saw it online somewhere, so I can't take personal credit for thinking of it. But
this is a damn good question.
It's basically, if you could take one actor's or actress's full career of filmography and combine it into one movie, who do you think would make the best movie? And it was really hard because when you started looking into this, there's a lot of actors that just have really crap movies mixed into their filmography. So it's okay, we'll just throw them out there. Who wants to go first?
I'll go first. So I originally had 3 that kind of popped into my head as potential candidates. The 3 that I started with was Tom Hanks,
on my list,
Harrison Ford,
on my list,
and Keanu Reeves.
Ooh, did not have him on my list.
So I eliminated Tom Hanks from the question
Which is tough to do.
Because I wanted more
Action.
Yeah, I tended to lean more action driven. So I eliminated Tom Hanks, which was very tough. I mean, has comedy and drama really nailed down, because at the early part of his career, everything was funny, and then he turned into an Academy Award winning actor, and basically everything since has been really good. But Tom Hanks out. Keanu Reeves has two of the most badass franchises under his belt in The Matrix and John Wick. He also has speed from his early career, and then has comedy as well with Bill and Ted.
Yep.
So he was a strong candidate for me, and I ended up eking out to Harrison Ford, who is my official pick, mainly because of his two most well-known roles in Han Solo and Indiana Jones. I thought the combination of those two balanced funny and action driven very, very well. And then really he's been in his share of like not so great movies, but he was never the actor that kind of just sold out and made a shit ton of movies. Like he seemingly pick and choose what he did in his career. So you add in movies like The Fugitive, Air Force One.
Get off my plane.
Exactly. Like just a well-rounded action star for somebody that's not really like built to be like an action star or anything like that. He also had
Blade Runner, which was awesome.
And that was my other one, was
Patriot
Blade Runner,
Games.
the original, and then
2049,
which were both just awesome movies. So really I tended to lean the more action route, but because of his characters, mainly Indiana Jones and Han Solo, having the comedic aspect, that's sort of the realm that I went with, is because he's been in a ton of badass movies, a lot of really recognizable and well-known characters. So that's how I kind of landed on Harrison Ford as my official pick.
Okay. Yeah, so he came in at number 2 for me. Tom Hanks was on my list. I actually had Will Ferrell at number 3, but my number 1 is Bill Murray, because I tend to lean more towards comedies, and him similarly to Tom Hanks, where in his early career he was in comedies, and then later he was in more I don't want to say dramatic movies,
more dramedies.
Dramedies, yes, like the Royal Tenenbaums comes to mind, but he had Meatballs, Stripes, and Caddyshack were probably my first when I was really young, when I first was exposed to him, and then Ghostbusters and What About Bob are what really, really drove it home for me. I love What About Bob, Kingpin, Groundhog Day, and then of course Space Jam. So it helps that he's from Chicago, as is Harrison Ford, which I don't think actually really made me pick one way or another. But I love Bill Murray's body of work. I think he's so funny. He's so effortlessly funny that it was close between him and Harrison Ford. Because actually, at first, when you first sent this, Harrison Ford was the first guy that popped in my head because of Indiana Jones and because of Han Solo. But as I thought about this more, which I don't think I've ever spent more time on a topic for this show than I have about this, because
it was very thought-provoking.
Oh my gosh.
Because you could go so many different ways with it.
Right.
I also had Al Pacino, Brad Pitt, and John Candy on my list, but I went with Bill Murray. Final answer.
So I thought for the longest time I was going to go with Christian Bale because of just the physical transformations as well, because he commits so much for every role. But then I started to actually try and think about it from the aspect of trying to piece a storyline together with the movies at hand. And I'm actually going to go...
He's all over the place.
He's all over the place. So it was kind of hard to make them like connected. Like I was trying to think like, okay, maybe American Psycho, like, you know, he's a murderer and then he's like on the run, so he becomes Batman, and you know, so it was just, but it gets tough. But I'm gonna go with Hugh Jackman actually, because a little bit of variety there. He's got some musicals. I mean, I love The Greatest Showman, But I also thought of it from the aspect that you could literally piece the movie as him, because we've already gotten a little peek of this in X-Men Origins Wolverine, where he's like going through time as Wolverine. Each movie could be him in disguise as Logan doing something different, and he's still out there being Wolverine and helping save the world. And he could be in like Les Miserables. He could be like fighting in the French Revolution and then like singing and shit, and then like be J.P. Barnum. And so I just like pieced the story together. I was like, that's
like
kind of
that.
cool. So maybe not the best body of work, like not a lot of comedy in there to your guys' point, but I also thought just because it would be funny, like about Vin Diesel, because most of his is just Fast and the Furious, and then he turns into a tree,
And then
he just like a tree. He crashes into a tree, and he just turns into it. That's like
I
how his
remember
story
that
ends.
now that you bring him up. When I first saw Fast and the Furious, I think I was a freshman, so I was like 14, and just thinking he was like the coolest person ever. And now as I get older and he gets older and still tries to be Vin Diesel from 2000, he's such a dork.
Such a dork.
Such a dork.
All right, that's all we've got for this
always
week's.
been that
Oh, go ahead.
character.
Exactly.
He's
Just
just
like-
the same guy,
Right.
always.
He is similar
This
to
is
like
like
every
quarter
movie
mile
he's
at a
in.
time.
He's Vin Diesel playing Vin Diesel, just
Right.
like Paul Giamatti's always playing Paul Giamatti.
Hey, you are who you are.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to wrap it up there. I got some stuff going on, so I got to get out of here. Thanks for listening, all of our condiments out there. We appreciate you guys. If you don't already, follow us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube, at Bros Let's Talk. Subscribe to us there. You can find our podcast on Apple, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and basically anywhere your podcasts are listened to. It lives at anchor.fm/Bros Let's Talk, and our website is brosletstalk.com. For Jimmy and Andy, this is Pat. Later, dudes.
See you, bros.